It's like being on exercise for 5-6 days. It's as miserable, but the fun bits are as fun, and the miserable bits are as miserable. It was sad for the race that happened, but it's also good for the race because it needs to be a level playing field.
And the Marathon des Sables, folks, is 155 miles.
Thankfully, it all worked out to plan, and we've got this sort of great fairy tale ending.
Tom, how are you, brother?
Chris, lovely to see you, and yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I tell you, I'm absolutely made up, Tom, that you've spared a few minutes to come and chat on my humble podcast. We chatted, the last time we chatted must have been 3 years ago, and you were still serving. It was Welsh Guards?
Yeah.
And you were you a captain at the time, I think?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and you're now out of the military.
Yeah, I left middle of 2019, 1st of July 2019. So yeah, I've been out for weird time to get out, sort of middle of 2019, and then sort of straight into the C word that we don't mention anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a crazy time to get out, but my last 16, 17 months in the military were just incredible. I had so much freedom and free time to go and try and see what I could do in the trail running world. And when I decided to hand in my notice, they were great, and I could sort of just poodle about for 12 months, and it was great. Brilliant.
Friends at home. So Tom has just won what I would say, I'm just going to say this, the most iconic ultra marathon on the planet, probably the original 100-miler, the Western States. I first got to hear of it when I read my friend Dean Carnaz's wonderful book, Ultra Marathon Man. And I think Dean's won it a few times. Apologies if I'm wrong there, folks, but he's definitely run it several times. And we'll come on and talk about that, Tom. But just to peel back, the last time we spoke, you had just come third in the Marathon des Sables. I just got to thank you there for the inspiration. I remember when we chatted, it was a dream of mine to enter it. I think any ultra runner wants to enter the Marathon des Sables. You had just come third on your first crack at it.
Yeah, it was. Gee, it seems like a long time ago now. It's still one of my best memories of racing, and I think multi-stage races really do, more than anything, they bring out really who you are. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. It's a very expeditionary, it's very military savvy and military friendly. And I think either the currently serving or the veterans typically do much better than they should do on paper, just through sort of sheer mindset. And it's like being on, for those who are military and have got some understanding, it's like being on exercise for 5-6 days. It's as miserable, but the fun bits are as fun, and the miserable bits are as miserable. So yeah, it's definitely up there as one of my favorite races, and I will 100% be going back at some point in probably not the too distant future. Probably not next year, but after that, who knows?
Yes, and I got a feeling who's going to win that event.
We'll see. I think I learned a lot doing it. I was very naive going into the race. So yeah, I think it'll be a really fun project to do again.
So I did, just to make our friends at home aware, folks, I'm never big on like a huge training, not because I don't love running, which I try and do every day, but my life chucks up, can we just say veterans challenges? I think veterans out there know what I'm referring to. So I have a kind of patchy history of training. I ran Marathon des Sables this year with 10 weeks training, I think. My training, which was mainly 3 milers, and the Marathon des Sables, folks, is 155 miles. It culminated with me trying to run 20 miles. And I got to 90 and I called my girlfriend to come and pick me up because I was broken. Did that stop me going out there and completing it in the second toughest year on record? I also had chronic diarrhea all 7 days of it. So I really hardly ate a thing. And the heat, Tom, it was 52 degrees. It was insane.
This year sounded completely miserable and really, really, really challenging.
The very first night of running, mate, I was sat outside the Berber bivouac that you sleep in, and I watched a guy die, like literally opposite me. Jeez. And of course, all the shouts went out, medics, and then they're screaming for midazolam, which is like a Valium type thing. So I think he'd had a seizure. Jeez. And those medics, they brought him back to life.
Wow.
But it was that moment where you think, oh my God, this guy's poor family. They don't know what I'm watching. They think he's gone away for a dream of a lifetime. And there were so many people crashing out. So many people.
Yeah, I think there are some things for the race you can prepare for, but there are a lot of things that you can't prepare for. And I think by the sounds of things this year, it was just it was the perfect storm of things. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong. And it was just brutal.
And the traditional winner, his name slips my mind, the guy he's won it for the last few years.
El Moriabes.
Yes. There was a bit of scandal there because he pulled out. He got a 3-hour time penalty.
Yeah.
Because when they did a spot search of the bags and they found some cheese that the Berber tribesman that was supporting the race had obviously given him. And I think on sort of out of pride, I think he pulled out. So that I think his brother won it.
Yeah, I think it's good that the testing is done. Everyone's known that that's what's been happening whether it's from since they started doing it or from later on. But you've got to be fair, and if you're prepared to cross the line somewhere, then where else are you prepared to cross the line? So no, I think it was sad for the race that happened, but it's also good for the race because it needs to be a level playing field. And if it's not, it makes it almost impossible to win if you're not a local.
Yeah, I mean, there's us. I ditched everything, mate. I ditched even to the night before the race. I looked at my warm gear and I thought, let's just take a gamble. All I took was this ultra lightweight puffer jacket that weighed about the same as a big packet of crisps.
Yeah.
And all that served me for was a pillow. Right.
You should have bought a packet of crisps. That'd be much nice.
I was going through my food going, nah, someone's going to pull out and all their food's going to be, I made sure I stayed within the rules because it was just like an etiquette thing for me,
Yeah.
But it's even with ditching everything, and all I really had was my mobile phone and a small backpack. That was the only extras I had that other people didn't. Plus, I had the little cooker and a really lightweight cooking pot.
Yeah.
But even then, I'm still 8.5 kilos. And you see these front runners rock up and they've got this little tiny backpack on. It looks like they've got a sandwich in there or something. And you're thinking there's some team strategy. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Tom, can you tell us how did you hear of the Western States and how did that become your dream?
like you said rightfully in your introduction, Western States is the original 100-mile race. For me, I guess when I pick races, I like to pick races that not only have got the best field and the best competitors, but also the ones that have got a little bit of a story behind it. And Western States is one of those. It started as a horse race 50 years ago. A guy called Gordy decided that he was going to run it instead of ride his horse.
His horse went lame, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And he wanted to get to the finish line. So he's like, right, well, I'm just going to run it. And yeah, he runs it in way over 24 hours. And then came back next year. Oh, maybe I can do it in under 24 hours, and then ran under 24 hours, and just slowly and slowly it sort of got more and more popular. And yeah, a race was then born, and here we are today. And it's just a very, very different style of racing. It's very different to European racing. The volunteers and the crowds and the spectators are just the most enthusiastic, which is incredible. It's such a special race. So I did in 2019. I raced Western States, and I always wanted Western States to be my first 100-mile race. And it went well in 2019. I finished third, so I was still on the podium, which was great. But I definitely felt like there were some more stones to unturn, and I hadn't reached my pinnacle. I hadn't reached what I thought that I was capable of. So the plan was then born in collaboration with Adidas Terex, that we would create a shoe that is the perfect weapon of choice for this race. So we spent all throughout COVID, and then all last year through 2022, sort of really priming it and going through rounds and rounds and rounds of different prototypes. And I then got my entry into Western States after podiuming at UTMB last year. And sort of the plan was then set, the stage was then set, and thankfully it all worked out to plan, and we've got this sort of great fairy tale ending. And that, yes, the shoes were great, but there was a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication gone in. Like if I look at numbers from this year, I got married at the end of last year, so took a little bit of time off training. But from the 1st of January this year until the race week, I had averaged 126 miles a week with 8,500 meters of climbing every single week. Some weeks were a bit bigger, some weeks were a bit smaller, but the average was 126. There's no such thing as a perfect training block. There's no such thing as sort of a perfect pre-deployment training, but you make it as good as you possibly can. And for me, this was as close to perfect as I'm ever going to get in a training block. And it's been I absolutely loved it. I sort of split my time between the UK and the US, and it was just, things turned out perfectly. And it's hands down my favorite race. I absolutely love it, and I'm already excited to go back sometime very soon.
So you had Adidas make a shoe for you?
Yes, it is a commercial shoe. It's coming out very, very soon. And that was a really fun project. It was definitely a partnership of creating this product that's not just for elite runners, but it's for everyone. Whether you're trying to win a race and break course records, or you're trying to get ahead of the cutoffs in the shoes for you. And that comes out, I can't say when, but at the end of August. Which is super, super exciting. And it's been a really fun project with them.
Is the shoe named after you?
No, it's not, sadly. I'm not allowed to say the name of the shoe.
No, okay, no problem. I love Adidas. So it's sadly their shoes fit too small for me, but
This one won't.
Yeah. The thing that I learned so much on MDS was about feet. Even I got extra wide hockers, they were still jamming my toes in. So much so on the last day, I think it was a marathon on the last day, I took my socks off, Tom, just to give me that little bit extra. And I ran with no socks on. I got a tiny little rub on my ankle, but it's kind of funny, you think how much people must have stressed about what socks to wear and tape your feet. And I've never taped my feet and I didn't wear socks. I think I'm going to try these Ultras that seem to be more of like a barefoot, like really, really wide. Yeah, you've covered your training. We should tell people what the course is like, shouldn't we? Because it starts in the snowy mountains and then comes into the desert.
Yeah, so it's 101 miles. It starts just to the northwest of Lake Tahoe. And it starts in a town called Olympic Valley, where Winter Olympics in 1968, I think. Yeah, and then you go up to just over 3,000 meters above sea level, and then you start to descend. And this year, because they've had so much snow in the US, we had snow for sort of the first 30 miles. And then the weather wasn't that hot this year. Sometimes it can get up to 45, 48 degrees, but we were sort of fairly lucky and it only got up to, I think, 32, 33, which is still hot, but it's not as hot as it can be. The race then sort of goes, you start at 5 a.m. and you're in a jacket and sleeves because it's so cold and you're in snow. And then, fast forward 8 hours and you're running through these canyons and it's sort of 98% humidity. It's wild. And then, you finish in a small town called Auburn that was sort of it's right in the middle of sort of gold rush America. Which is very, very cool. And you finish with a lap of the track, which is incredibly special. Place the high school. It's just it's a completely wild race. It's a race of sort of it's a race of thirds with such different such different views. And you take a race like Ultra-Trail du Mont-Blanc that starts and finishes in Chamonix, and it's an incredible race and it's beautiful, but you do 12 hours of it in darkness, so you don't see a thing. And then the views are very similar for the rest of the race, whereas this, you're starting in sort of the high country and it looks sort of almost European Alpine, and you're then going through these canyons and it's proper Wild West, and there are snakes and bears and all sorts of things. It sort of makes you realize how safe we really are in Europe. And it's a completely wild course, but really fun. So climbing wise, it's got 8,000 meters of descent and 6,000 meters of ascent. So it's a net downhill course. So it's fast, but it wrecks your quads. You need to spend lots of time in the gym sort of earlier in the year, sort of trying to bulletproof knees and quads and hips and things, which thankfully paid off. But now I've sort of written a blueprint of what training needs to be to race my best, and it's it's a lot of hard work. Sadly no shortcuts here.
And 8,000 meter, that's the height of Everest, isn't it? Thereabouts.
Yeah. Everest's 860 or something. It's a lot of climbing.
What about the sort of logistics? I mean, where do you stay? Because obviously you're going to run to a completely different. You're going to run 100 miles away. Do you get transport back to a hotel or? No,
stayed at the start line the few days before, and then stayed at the finish line the night after. And Adidas, we sent out a big team. We had 4 athletes racing, including myself. So that was all. Typically, when we travel to these team races, they'll sort of sort out a big Airbnb for all of us, and we'll have a chef in the house. We'll have a physio, and it's just a really nice environment and a really nice atmosphere before the races, and then fairly similar then after the race. Because you're so tired, but everyone's finishing at different times. Because there are 4 of us, I probably finished 3.5, 4 hours before the last of our athletes finished. So yeah, you're waiting around, but it's really nice. There's a great atmosphere, and yeah, everyone's cheering and supporting everyone. And yeah, we then stay at the finish line, and you can then easily then come back the next day. There's what they call the golden hour. So there's a time limit of 30 hours. So from 29 to 30 hours is the golden hour where the last finishers finish. So for me, it's super inspiring to go and watch these athletes who put so much hard work in, and they've had a way harder experience than I have. Like, I'm lucky enough to be able to finish it fairly quickly and to under 15 hours, and they're slogging along, going through the night, and it becomes a completely different sport. Running with a head torch is a different sport to running without a head torch. The 2 times I've raced states, I come back to watch the final hour, and it's just it's incredible. And then you get the prize givings then after that, given your belt buckle, and either trophies, a big brass cougar, which is very cool. It's a very, very, very special race.
Does that fit in your hand luggage?
No, it's in the process of being shipped. It's actually supposed to arrive tomorrow.
Have you got your buckle there, Tom?
I do. So I was given two things. First off, the finish line.
Wow.
Very cool. So if anyone's got any ideas of what to do with it, the winning idea at the moment is you can send it to someone who'll make it into like a teddy bear. And so you can have different parts of it as different parts of the toy. And so because everyone who finishes in the 30 hours gets a belt buckle. If you finish in under 24 hours, you get a gold one. And if you finish after that, then you get a silver one. I already had a buckle from 2019. And so I just assumed that they would all be the same. But this one is, it's very cool. And it sort of says Western States winner on the front.
Wow.
And then it's engraved name on the back. Yeah, it's very, 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 very special. It's currently sat in its box. You are allowed to, and they want you to wear your belt buckle once a year on the day that the lottery for Western States is drawn. So I need to go and get a bit of a leather belt that I can attach this on. But I think they're not difficult to get in the UK, but far easier to get in the US as people actually wear belts like this. Whereas if you wore that sort of out I live in Loughborough, if I wore that to the big Tesco's in Loughborough, then I think I might get some pretty weird looks.
You might get robbed, mightn't you?
Yeah, precisely. It's very cool, and it's just really nice having a little bit of sort of local heritage and local culture around it. But it's living in a box in our office at the moment.
Tom, how is it for us kind of, us pack runners? Did you meet Courtney Dowwater? Is she like a friend of yours, or? Yeah,
good friend. Yeah, very good friend. The remarkable thing about Courtney, for however good she is, and she is incredible, she is the most normal person you've ever met. If you went for a coffee and you didn't know who she was, you'd have absolutely no idea that she is the greatest of all time at what she does. Incredibly humble, incredibly hardworking, incredibly talented. And what's most important, even more so important than all those, is she's just a really, really nice person. And I think that's what a lot of times sort of people can look at these sort of role models and idols and think, oh, they're the most incredible athlete, which is great, but that's not going to last forever. She is, and it's then forgotten that these people are actually people, and they're sons or daughters, brothers or sisters. And she's just genuinely the most incredible person. Very, very lucky to be able to call her friend. And she's exceptionally talented and a really nice person. So it's
and she's a great ambassador for the sport, isn't it? Because she's always smiling.
100%. And it's genuine as well. It's not put on, which I think is which is great.
Yeah, she's certainly got her own style. How was it with your crew? What were you fueling up on the race?
I pretty much solely use Morton, which is a sort of carbohydrate company who sort of specialize in making hydrogels. And I've been working with them for a couple of years now. So I fuel quite highly, significantly higher than a lot of other people who are racing. And I think it's definitely something that we train a lot for. So I fueled 120 grams of carbohydrate an hour from the first hour till the last hour, which is, I would have said, it's probably the highest amount of anyone in the race. But if you take comparisons from other sports, sort of from long course triathlon at Kona to the hardest stage of the Tour de France, there is a direct correlation with the amount of carbohydrates ingested and finish times. And the more carbohydrates your body's able to consume, the faster your finishing time is, which I think is really interesting. So gone are the days of, oh, how was your run? Oh yeah, it was amazing. I only had one gel. Like it's now not a cool thing to struggle and to suffer, and actually being able to fuel properly is now quite cool. And I've also started using, I don't follow a ketone diet, but I've started using ketones in both training and racing. There's actually some really, really, really interesting research and studies that are being done at the moment with endurance athletes. Some of which I can talk about, some of which I can't because I've signed an NDA about it. So dopamine, for example, what your body releases when it's happy. If you feel good, you typically race far better and you're more happy and you're able to sort of enjoy yourself more and push it a little bit harder. Whereas if you feel bad, that's typically when you then start bonking. And there's sort of been very promising studies with dopamine and linked with ketone ingestion, which is really interesting. And that's then not to go into the other sports sciencey things of actual energy and using a different energy system for fueling. And the amount, for example, like I monitor my glucose pretty constantly in training and in racing. And my glucose levels are so much more stable when I'm on ketones. I don't get the sort of huge peaks and troughs. It's it's higher, but it's far more smooth. And I think in endurance sports, that's what we want. We don't want the highest highs and the lowest lows. We will kind of want to be mediocre the whole way through. I use a lot of caffeine as well. So for that, I drink Red Bull at all of the key critical aid stations. But caffeine, again, it's a super interesting one that in really hot conditions, caffeine can also raise your core body temperature. And what you're trying to do in hot races is to keep your core body temperature cooler than everyone else's. So we were really specific with caffeine and caffeine usage during the race, and only started using caffeine properly and having higher doses of caffeine after the hottest stages of the race. Lots and lots of thought goes into this. The Excel spreadsheet that I make pre-race takes 3 weeks to build, and then come race day it changes automatically because, as you know, no plan survives contact, and everything changes, and you then just got to adapt. But if you know what the end state needs to be, okay, cool, I need to consume 120 grams of carb an hour. That's great. I can test and adjust. I can, use what I'm planning on using. But if my stomach turns or something happens, then I'm able to change it. So, that's a long-winded answer. I very, very rarely eat any solids, especially for a short race. For a fast race like Western States, that's only 15 hours. For me, that was, pretty much 50-50 liquid and gel. For a race like UTMB, I will have some solid food as well, especially through the night. And I'll try and have more solid food sort of around when my body thinks that it should be having a meal. Whereas at Western States, I only miss one meal. I only miss lunch. Whereas UTMB, I'll miss far too many meals: dinner, breakfast, lunch. So yeah.
And for our friends at home that might not be aware, so when you say ketones, we're talking about running in ketosis. So your body's burning fat as opposed to like starch, carbohydrates, and the glucose that produces.
Yeah, kind of. So when your body has got no carbohydrates in it, it then produces these ketones that predominantly get sent to your brain to keep your brain functioning so you can think even when you're at your most tired. So what this is doing is it's allowing your brain to still function properly and your carbohydrates not having to go to your brain. So it started out as for use with the US military. What they really struggled with was getting to what they call rucking or tabbing into an assault or an offensive action, and they weren't as skillful. And there's the more tired you are, the less skillful you become. So they thought, right, is there anything that we can do that our bodies do naturally that we can sort of extrapolate and help us? And there's been some incredible research about sort of in US special forces groups who they sort of go on the ranges, fire, and then go on a hard tab or ruck while using ketones and then firing afterwards. And their scores are almost exactly the same. Whereas compared to non-ketone, their scores were significantly worse when they were more tired. And in ultra running, you need to be able to think for the whole of the race, because every race, 99% of long distance trail running races finish with a downhill, because funnily enough, the villages and the towns aren't made on the top of mountains because they wouldn't be there for very long, because they're made in the valleys. And in order to get to the valley, you're not climbing up the valley road because that'd be super boring. You're descending from your final climb into the valley. If you roll your ankle with 2 miles to go and you can't run because you've not been paying attention on the trail, you're going to lose so much time. And the race isn't won or the race isn't finished until you cross over that line. So to be able to concentrate, with ketones is one thing. But for me, sort of the combination of, it started out as purely caffeine, but now it's sort of taking a bit more of playing around with some ketones and seeing what happens. I didn't start using them too much before Western States, but still trialing them, and who knows.
Yes. Tom, tell me, was there a stage in the race where you realized you were going to win, or is that always like, you don't want to go there?
I think I was probably, for the first time in a race, I was stood on the start line, sort of supremely confident. And I genuinely thought that it was, if I have a really good day, then I think that it was my race to lose. And whether I actually thought that on the start line or not, is one thing, but sort of in hindsight, looking back at the race, I was really confident. There was then a big group of us for sort of the first 30 miles, which I kind of thought was going to happen because of all the snowpack. And things sort of just started to sort of filter out. And probably with 10 miles to go, I sort of allowed myself to start thinking about the finish. But then with about 8 miles to go, so we get to the final main checkpoint, and I was told that I had a 26-minute lead. So just thought, right, let's just shut things down a little bit. 26 minutes is a long time. I'm still going to have to run, but let's not do anything stupid. So kind of backed off a little bit, and sort of just then just meant that I could really enjoy the last couple of miles where there were some incredible crowds, and really sort of fully soak up the experience and realize what I had done. I'd put so much effort and so much hard work into it that I wanted to enjoy it.
And was there did anyone overtake you for the race, or did you have to overtake a lot of people at the start?
No, I kind of ran at the front of the race for the whole thing. I was definitely in the front group. I think the furthest back I was 12th, but you could have thrown a duvet over all of us. But when we were in a group like that, I would just sit at the back. Because we were in the high country, the navigations, you're not having to navigate because there are markers out, but sometimes they can be quite hard to see. So I would just put myself to the back of the group so you could see which way everyone was going, and you could then just pick the best line and use that experience rather than being at the front and using a bit more mental energy and having to use your brain a little bit more to follow the right path.
I think when I run it, I'm probably just going to lead from the front.
I think that's a very good idea. Yeah, you don't want people to slow you down.
Eat my dirt.
Exactly.
And tell us, Tom, what's it? Does it finish in a stadium, or am I?
Yeah, it finished in sort of a high school athletics track, the sort of half stadium.
And how is that last lap?
Yeah, insane. Really, really special. Yeah, just incredible. Words impossible to describe in words, but yeah, just a very, very, very special moment.
And how did you did you celebrate, or did you? Well, you said you went to the finish line to watch other people come in?
Yeah, so I hung about and watched the rest of my teammates finish, and then tried to get some sleep, but you never sleep that well because your body's so sore, and I've had so much sort of sugar and caffeine throughout the day, so you're never going to sleep that well. And then you had a good race, so you're super excited and your phone's going mad. But my sort of post-race ritual, if I struggle to sleep, is I watch the In-Betweeners, and it is my all-time. I reckon I've watched every episode 40 times, but it's my all-time favorite. I never watch it except post-race when I can't sleep. So yeah, that's I know that I finished a race when that's going on.
So when you're running down the road and a bus goes past, are you like, bus wankers?
Yeah, I'm very worried. I've got my briefcase, and so it's my all-time favorite. And I then I had a couple of friends who came out to Western States to watch, and we went to San Francisco afterwards. So I had a couple of days there. That was really nice, just to decompress a little bit. And I came back home, and my wife's currently training for to be selected for Team GB for the Olympics in triathlon. So it's sort of kind of back to work, just helping her as much as I can. And I sort of by accident got into training a little bit quicker than planned, but that's fine. Sort of my body's coping with it and reacting. And just nice to be back home. We've got sort of a proper family life. We've got dogs, chickens, a tortoise, and it's just really nice to be home and see friends and family, and it's just really nice.
Tom, just one question: do you drink alcohol?
Very, very rarely. Once or twice a year, maybe. Just I wouldn't say I was teetotal, but that's probably just because I don't want to put a name or a label on it. Maybe once or twice a year, but there'd be some years that I drunk at my wedding, not much, but I'll try and have a beer if the opportunity's right. I'll try and have a beer or two after a big race result. But it depends. I think nowadays alcohol-free beer is so good that it's fine. But I have so many other hobbies that I'd rather spend my time and money on than going and getting hammered. That was a former life of mine.
Yes, exactly. Couple of shout outs. So just a big thank you to my friend Dean Karnazes, who started me down the road of ultra running. Wrote a wonderful book called Ultra Marathon Man. So Dean, much love to you, mate. And also to my friend Ricky, who's going to row the Atlantic with me next year. Ricky last weekend, just completely off the bat, set a course up around his local park and ran 110 miles in 24 hours. And I was privileged to run the 95 to 99 mile leg with him just to make sure he got the 100, which he did. So big up to you, Ricky. And yes, Tom, just absolutely amazing. I ask you about the alcohol because I just think it's something that, it's kind of a dream stealer, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people have got very addictive personalities, and certainly a lot of people enjoy it. Like I certainly do, and yeah, I just find it far easier to avoid situations that I know can lead me down a slippery slope. If I start something, I find it very difficult not to finish it. And that's true with running, training, a box of Pringles, a bag of Maltesers, or a 6-pack of beer. And so for me, it's just easier to, not have it.
Stay on the rails and follow your dream.
Exactly.
Tom, look, you've been so kind to give us so much of your time, especially at this unique moment in your life. Just on behalf of me and all my friends out there, massive, massive congratulations. It's a great thing for the UK to have a champion in the Western States. Are you the first Englishman to win it?
I'm the first English man to win it, but it's been won by 2 British females before, Beth Pascal and Ellie Greenwood. Oh,
brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Tom, stay on the line just so I can thank you properly. But like I say, massive, massive congratulations. What's the next, what's on the horizon?
UTMB in 6 weeks.
Can you just explain that very briefly for people that...
UTMB is the Super Bowl of trail running in Europe. It is 110 miles with 11,000 meters of ascent and descent, circumnavigating Mont Blanc, starting in Chamonix, running through parts of France, parts of Italy, parts of Switzerland, then back into France. It is on the 1st of September. And it's going to be carnage. No man has ever finished on the podium of Western States and UTMB in the same year. So that's the project.
Well, I'm not going to enter that one just so that you will be that man on the podium, Tom.
Perfect, Chris. Thank you.
Tom, much, much love to you, mate. Thank you so, so much. Like I say, stay on the line just so I can thank you properly. Friends at home, much love to you as well. What an incredible achievement. Could we get some likes on the podcast for Tom's effort? Please, folks. Please share. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Chris, thank you very much and look forward to seeing you soon.
Very welcome, mate. Very, very welcome.